Hello everyone, welcome. I'm Roger Fusselman. I'm here to talk about something called concepts from a hat. This we're going to do as an activity to make connections between important concepts in a field and sometimes divergent concepts that might relate to a field. It's simple. I have two hats here. Here's one hat. I have cards where I've written principles. These are principles for teaching. I have my own rubric for teaching, and I've adapted these from the rubric that I have. Long story as to how I made the rubric, but here it is. There's 15 concepts here. This is a lovely hat. I bought it in Myeongdong. I tried on different ones, and this is one I went with. It's fairly duckbill-like, looks like it's good for fox hunting. Over here, we have 5 ideas. And this is a Zara hat. It was bought for me by the She. Thank you very much. Very attractive, looks good on me. And I have in here more divergent ideas. So, and then we're done with this. I'll try on all 3. And you vote in the chat room, in the comments section. Which hat do you think looks the best on me? So you get a chance to see these. For now, I thought, well, let's go with this, and this for kind of super old style. Let's try something brown for conventional, and let's try Zara for something a bit offbeat. So that's what we're going to do. Now, a word about this activity. I did not originate this activity. This is adapted from the objectivist movement of maybe the 60s, where people that were big into Ayn Rand's philosophy of objectivism would put like 20 concepts in a hat, and they'd pull 2 out at random. And they'd have to make the connection between the 2 of them. And sometimes they would be very far away, hierarchically speaking. So one example that I heard was about the concept of the evidence of the senses and private roads. The evidence of the senses being the senses are valid, there's something to accomplish. And they're not something to accomplish. They're principles. They're basically the foundation for knowledge. And without that, we wouldn't have a good foundation. Private roads, that transportation should be private. It shouldn't be public. So how do you connect 2 ideas like this, assuming, of course, that they're true? Well, basically, the idea is, well, you need senses to validate a certain form of knowledge. You need to validate reason. You need reason in order to validate that human beings should have their own rights and their own lives, etc., should live. And once you validate rights, then you realize, well, that applies to property, and that property applies to how people move around, and that we shouldn't coerce forms of transportation on people. Now, in the old days of people that were in their teens or early 20s trying to make these connections, that was really hard to do, to make that kind of connection. So let me put these down. So you get the idea. 2 ideas. How are they interrelated? How is one more important than the other, perhaps? Are they equally important? Are they two examples of a higher principle? Do they just overlap? Are they relatable but not particularly what's the word for it? Not particularly organized in such a way. The point is to have that knowledge in your head of all those little fiefdoms of knowledge that you have, and to see how they're connected. And if it's your profession, like me, teaching, it's good for me to make these connections and understand myself how these ideas are related together. So that's what we're going to do. But we're going to do it for people like me who teach English to speakers of other languages. Now, conceivably, the best way to do this is if you're in TESOL, T-E-S-O-L, then get together with other colleagues, decide on 20 principles, randomly put them in somewhere on pieces of paper, pull them out, and work together as a group. That's totally fine. Or if you're in another profession, using for that kind of profession. So this could be applied for just about everything. But since I'm living my life, let's focus on my work, my job, and how I could achieve it. And if you're the kind of person that is also needing to integrate information, understand it, and see how things are interrelated, I think you'll get something out of this. Okay, so let's begin. Okay, so the brown hat, we'll try 2 from here. Okay, so let's see. I might change the rules slightly as I go along, just in case. Okay, what does this one say? Have content that is new and enjoyable. Okay, there's one. And let's try another one. Also from the same hat. Ah! State the purpose of the lesson. Okay, so let's connect those. Well, stating the purpose of a lesson is important so that the students can have a mental set of here's what's going to happen. Of course, you don't always have to say everything about what's going to happen, but if you give them a heads up about the kinds of things that will occur, leaving out aside little surprises that it's best to withhold from them to make things more motivating, then yes, you want to communicate this. Have content that is new and enjoyable. They'll often fold their arms. If they go over irregular verbs for the 15th time in their life, then that's going to be a problem for them because they've done it already. Or if it's too difficult, or if it's not related to them in somehow. So it has to be new and enjoyable together. Let's put it that way. So what's the connection? Well, offhand, this is what I say. That is, because you're setting a mental set for people, if they know what's going to happen, then they'll be prepared more for the actual content itself. And if the content is new and enjoyable for them, then when you announce it, they will have it. When you announce that that's what you're going to do, then they will have a better sense of, oh, well, this is worth focusing on. This is different. This is not what I normally expected. It's a positive deviation from the norm. Okay, so that's how I'd connect those two. So far, so good. Let's try two more in this hat. Now, one more from this hat. And we'll try one from the other hat. Okay. Ooh, that's another heads up for the students. Inform students on how they will be assessed. And let's find one. So let's put this here. And let's find one in the other hat now. Our Zara hat. Okay. Don't play the butter notes. Now, this is from the history of American jazz. Herbie Hancock was playing jazz with Miles Davis one time, and he thought he heard Miles Davis tell him, "Don't play the butter notes." And Herbie Hancock is going, what does that mean? And Miles Davis walked away because that's the kind of guy Miles Davis is. And he said, "Well, butter notes. What does he mean butter notes?" He said, "Well, butter's fats. Maybe it's extraneous. Don't play extraneous notes. Kind of keep it basic. Don't kind of push it with extraneous things." Something like that. It turned out that he had misheard what Miles Davis had said. But this became a principle for how he played, and he wound up being more streamlined keyboardist because of this sort of advice in the middle of nowhere that wasn't quite Miles Davis's advice. It wasn't quite his. So that's don't play the butter notes. Inform students about how they are assessed. They don't want to get the grades and go, "Well, how come I got a C? I thought it was B. I thought it was an A." So they need to know how. So what's the connection here? And I would say the connection is this, that when you're making grades, when you're trying to design assessment for students, the basics should be strict and straightforward. Not a big, long checklist of 15 different things, but rather maybe 3 to 5 basic principles. Keep it simple, keep it direct. That gives them room in order to dance around with whatever project they're giving. So if your rubric is 5 items rather than 12, then that's less overwhelming for them, and their assessment will make more sense to them because it'll be more essentialized and more compact. Okay, there's a connection. Let's go back to strictly brown hat. No, thank you, Myung-dong. To one here. Now let's try another one. Closing my eyes out of a sense of fairness to the cards. Give the cards a little bit of freedom. Okay, boom. Use materials that are motivational to learning. Manage time well and keep pacing natural. Okay, these are both from my teacher's rubric. By the way, my teacher's rubric is simply, did I do that or not? Yes or no. So it's like a check it off, but it's structured like a rubric. It's 4 or 5 rows of 8, 4 or 5 rows of 5 things or 8 things or something like that. So the idea is to have a sort of binary system, but it's structured like a rubric. It's according to categories and whatever. Okay, managing time well, use materials that are motivational to learn. Okay, so if you do not manage time well, they will not be able to enjoy the materials. If they're going to do a presentation, if you're building this presentation, and it's the great thing that they're going to do, and you don't give them enough time, then you've just defeated the purpose. So time management is very crucial. That there should be a presentation in TESOL on all the aspects of time management as they relate to assessment, as they relate to instruction, as they relate to classroom management, to all those things. So you have to write down somewhere, this is going to be 3 minutes, this is going to be 5 minutes, this is going to be 2 minutes, this is going to be 10 minutes. And you have to give a lot more time to the more motivational stuff and a little less time to the stuff that you can glide through. So you have to have a sense of what to do that. And when you have pacing like that, then the materials are enjoyed a little bit more. And they go, well, I wish I had more time to do that. Oh, well. And they walk away from the class going, oh, that could have been something, I guess. And you don't want that. You want them to walk away from the class satisfied. Okay, boom. Okay, now we're going to try the Myeongdong hat and the Zara hat. The Zara hat was not bought in Myeongdong, so I can make that distinction. Okay, so here we go again. Myeongdong hat first. Close my eyes. Okay. Ooh. Have classroom interactions that students will enjoy. And what's from... Okay, let me put this here. I got the hat out of full disclosure. Close my eyes again. Summer bodies are meant for the winter. Why did I put this? Well, there's a teacher that I used to teach with who I had the opportunity to manage for summer camps. And on her Facebook page, she said this: summer bodies are meant for the winter. And she was referring to getting, fit in the winter so that in the summer she looked better and more powerful in her appearance and all those things like that. So I remember hearing this phrase and it resonated in my head. So it came from an actual teacher, but it was not specifically about teaching. So what's the connection between this and have classroom interactions that students will enjoy? Well, basically, I think this is saying that preparation is everything. That you should get ready for whatever circumstance you're in so that when things come, you achieve what's going on. So you want to plan ahead of time, as far ahead of time as you can, so that the interactions occur. So, for example, when you're planning interactions, you might have to choose which students interact beforehand. You might have to choose how they'll interact. If you're having them stand up and talking with each other and they're changing around to the next person, you could sometimes get confused. I've gotten confused where the coordination was off and they wind up speaking with 2 students about the same thing, and that's not what you wanted. So having enjoyable interactions means preparing for these, making sure that they're going to be ready so when the time comes for the big moment, when summer arrives, they got it. Okay, boom. Oh, fell on the ground. Don't worry, I've done those already. So let's go back to the brown Myeongdong hat. 2 of these. Oh, nope. I'm sorry. I didn't do this in front of you. Let me do this in front of you. Okay, boom. Let's put this here. And boom, let's put this here. Okay, so what did they say? Be friendly and personable. And this one, teach with meaningful enthusiasm. I'm going to lose the one with this hand. I'm going to put this back in the card, and I'm going to pull from the other hat because I think that's too easy for me. So let's pull from the other hat. And when you're doing this activity, that's something to consider, that your divergent Zara hat will be better. So what did I pull from Zara? Teach with meaningful enthusiasm and be professional in appearance. Okay, not as easy to connect, although I think these are pretty straightforward how you can connect them. So teach with meaningful enthusiasm. You know, they say when you're teaching that students don't necessarily respond to your pedagogy, but they do respond to how much you believe in what you're doing, saying, coordinating, etc. So if you're enthusiastic about it, they will enjoy it. If you're having fun, they can have fun, right? So that has to be at the root. If you're just droning on and on, the passive voice is used when focusing on the object of, if that's what you're doing, then they're going to turn into the same thing. You'd be surprised how influential you are in a positive and negative way. Be professional in appearance. That might be, presumably, dressing this way. Dressing in some way that says, look, I'm the teacher, I'm a little bit different from you in some way, etc. Now, it's possible to combine these two. One time, I've told this story before. One time I had to teach I was teaching and I did not have my flashcards to teach. So I decided, well, I don't have anything to teach, and these are preschool students. So the only visual I have is my clothes. I'll just teach clothes. I don't know if they know clothes. So this is my first year of teaching. I walk in and I teach men's clothes. And I walk out of class going, it's probably unfair if I teach women's clothes using flashcards. So I'm going to have to wear women's clothes to the next class. So it's the only time I've worn women's clothes on purpose as part of teaching. I really haven't worn them outside since, or before that, for that matter. But being professional in appearance means that you're marked for what you're doing and that you're ready. And I think it contributes to enthusiasm if you're dressed up a certain way. It's like you've put on a mask or whatever. People that played Batman in film have sometimes said that once I put on the costume, I got into the character. I got into who Batman was. And so I think the same can be said of when you're sort of dressed for success. That doesn't necessarily mean a suit, tie, or a dress or whatever, but it does mean being dressed up in such a way that you are marked as separate or in the zone as a teacher. Okay, I'm going to count that as answered. And now let's go back to this one. Pull 2 out. This one and this one. Okay, so give students choices in how they interact. Be friendly and personable. Okay, back to friendly and personable again. So you don't necessarily want to tell them you always talk with him, you always talk with her. You don't want to say, okay, do strictly this. You want to give them the ability to say yes, to go this way or that way. If they have certain feeling of agency in the classroom, even if you're having them focused on one activity, then that way they will have better choices about how they do it, and they will feel more empowered, more independent, more positive. If they are more independent, and I think here independence, the feeling of independence is key, then they will. Okay, this is actually harder than I expected. If you're friendly and personable, that relates to independence too, because it's a way of saying I'm in charge of who I am, and I can be positive about life if I want to. That's the best I can do here. So this is strangely difficult. Okay, choices in how they interact, and being friendly and personable. Which is more fundamental? Probably this is more fundamental because you want choices, and choices matter more because they free will, volition, matters more to suggest how we live. It's not like we're doomed or trapped or determined by one particular focus. We can choose to be happy. We can choose to be sad in a certain way. I know there's more to it than that, but let's just put it that way. And being friendly and personable is one of those choices, where if we make that choice, then that will be motivational to them to make decisions. And if you're saying, hey, do this, or you can do either of these, then they're sold more on the fact of having choices. Even if they want a single track experience, by you being friendly and personable, that's more motivational for them to be in a situation where they can make a couple choices, do this activity, that activity, talk to this person versus talk to that person, something like that. Okay, that one was the hardest one. It seemed like it'd be one of the easier ones, but it was the hardest one. Okay, so how many? I have 2 left in the Zara hat. And how many do I, and I have 1, not looking at these, just counting. And I have 5 left here. So I should do 2, 2. I should do 2, 2, 5 and 2? Is that correct? Uh-oh. No, I have 6, okay. So I should do 1, 2, 2, 1, 2. Maybe. We'll find out. Let's start with these. We're going to start with this hat. Okay, 2 from here. Know clearly and expertly. The topic being taught before teaching it. And we'll try another one from here. What does it say? Give feedback that is pedagogically informed. Okay, so if you come in a class and you have done your homework on what it is that you're teaching, rather than just simply relying on the textbook or whatever, then when you go into class, you will be a bit more commanding, a bit more authoritative, and people will respect what it is that you're saying. They will also learn what is actually the case. Or at least they'll be more likely to learn what is actually the case. Now, give feedback that is pedagogically informed. Well, to be informed about, to give them feedback on what they are doing in class, in terms of word choice, grammatical structure, their discourse, whatever it is that you as a teacher are doing, you should know what you're talking about. You should have a sense of what the goal is. Today, I taught students how to do infomercials. And I listened to a bunch of infomercials, and I got a sense of the structure. I saw on YouTube an improv game doing infomercials using different objects. It was for an improv class, but improv in English class. And so I did a little research on it, and I was able to speak authoritatively on this. I showed them the structure for how to do it, some language, and so I'll be able to give them feedback on it because it's research, because I cared. And I wasn't just coming up with it at the last minute. So if you own the knowledge of something, if you look up a particular thing if you read an article in your book and it's about a weird town somewhere, Gary, Indiana, let's just say that. So if you're reading about Gary, Indiana in the textbook, and the textbook talks about, Michael Jackson came from Gary, Indiana, and other things, then it's worthwhile for you to look up a little something about Gary, Indiana there. In terms of content, and that will put your brain in a better sense of how to check out what it is that they're doing. Because if they say things using this activity, I've just made this one up, but using this activity talking about Gary, Indiana, or some other towns. There's a small town called American Fork that has some weird characters in there. I thought of doing an article about that to bring into the classroom. Then you'll be able to give them feedback that makes sense instead of great job or needs work, that has a little bit more detail to it. Okay, boom. I hope that was clear. If not, we got YouTube comments to complain. So we're going to try Myeongdong first. Myeongdong is, let's try this one. Use different kinds of scaffolding in the materials. And let's try here. Make a game out of it. Okay. These are hard to connect. So this is something my father used to say when I was growing up. In fact, when he passed away, this word resonate around the time that he passed away. This sentence of his resonated in my mind again and again and again as sort of a summation of how he lived his life and the kind of advice that he gave. And I think, and he never explained what it meant. That's the curious thing. And I explain this as make things interesting to you or make things enjoyable to you, even if they're not necessarily by their nature interesting and enjoyable. And use different kinds of scaffolding in the materials. Okay, so let's try to connect these. And I think here we can be a little bit more applied. So let's say you're designing materials and let's say it's vocabulary materials and you want to use different kinds of scaffolding. So maybe you put in maybe you want to check their knowledge of something. Well, there are different ways of making it interesting. You can put in their first language for translation, which is legal, by the way. It's not wrong. In fact, studies support that. You can put in matching activities where they match the word with the definition. You can have them you can ask them questions. What's the opposite of this word? Or give me an example of that concept. If you're teaching the word reptile, for example, and you explain what it is in the abstract, you can ask students for examples of reptiles. And if they give you fish or salamander, you didn't quite do it. But if they give you turtle or alligator, you're closer to having had taught that. Okay, so how do you make that interesting? Well, you might make it a competition in the classroom. You might say, okay, side A, side B. Let's compete on this. So those different kinds of scaffolding. Scaffolding is support, right? And we use it in the classroom. If you make it fun for them, then when they get the knowledge and get the support from the process, then it's more enjoyable for them, and they realize, well, okay, I just learned vocabulary. That was cool. I got no problem with that. And so I think the connection is here. And I'm glad I'm stumbling on this, everybody, because I think that's part of the process. I think the connection is that you still want to make structure interesting somehow. I taught sentence structure one time by drawing a mountain. Is it a cat? Yes, it is. So the is on the lower level from the question and answer side, and the it is a higher level, and a cat was on the top, and yes is on top. So I kind of turned it into a sort of question mountain for those simple kinds of yes-no questions. And I remember drawing and feeling great that I drew that. So I did hangman one time with students in that forum where they had younger kids where they had to finish the word game, etc. Now, if you know about hangman, you know that it's not the best designed game in the world. It's designed to incentivize losing because some horrible guy gets hung, and that's not a good thing. So there are variations on it to fix that problem, but you know what game I'm talking about. Okay, cool. And yes, not. Okay, so I have three left in this hat, and one left in the Zara hat. Let's do the one in the Zara hat and one from here. Okay. Manage materials to help students accomplish goals. Do not allow yourself to become arrogant or resentful. Now, those of you that follow modern YouTube and stuff, you've probably heard of this Jordan Peterson fellow, a guy known for making these aphorisms that are very resonant, some of which you can agree with, some of which you may not. And this is one of his. And I chose this one. They're better aphorisms that he's done that apply to teaching. There are worse aphorisms that I don't think have a positive application or a negative application. This is kind of in the middle. So I chose that one. Again, Do not allow yourself to become arrogant or resentful. How does that apply to teaching? I'm curious to find out what my idea is here. And manage materials to help students accomplish goals. Okay, a lot of teachers get burnout, right? They get frustrated, and there's a lot of work that goes into it, often with little economic reward. You never hear of business person burnout, but you hear of teacher burnout. It's an issue of the field, which means that in the world today, the teaching field is poorly structured. And it's probably because it's been, for the most part, largely nationalized throughout the world. And so an incentive structure that engages teachers and makes them feel more rewarding simply does not exist. And so those people, thank you, government, become arrogant or resentful. They become a bit frustrated. Don't you know who I am? And other things like that. And it can be backed into a corner. And they're in this daily grind, day after day after day, where they feel like their lives are poorly managed, that they're in this tunnel and they can't get out of it, and the tunnel's not very rewarding. So what does that have to do with materials, manage materials to help students accomplish goals? Well, if you're in this state of mind, you're going to come in with the materials and they're not necessarily going to be that well organized. And these two will kind of interact with each other. The more disorganized they are, the more angry about life you will be. So organization, keeping your materials organized, maybe with paper clips, colored paper clips, I've seen people do that, something will incentivize you to enjoy the moment a little bit more. And you will feel less like you're in the bind and you just distributing, I just distribute handouts for a living. You will feel less like you're in a dead-end job with a bunch of students that you're responsible for. And so if you manage materials in such a way that it, perhaps with the right paper clips, perhaps with a special bag, who knows what, then, and it's done in a way that you can enjoy, then that works a little bit better. I used to have, you can get, at one time I bought Hello Kitty packing tape, and I wrapped a bunch of Hello Kitty packing tape around this paper bag. And for a while in class, I don't remember where I was doing this, but I was bringing in that Hello Kitty bag with resources in it and it was cute. And it was cute. And it allowed my job to be a bit more positive and a bit less negative like this. So it's a way that I could prevent myself from becoming arrogant or resentful. Okay, boom. And now the final two. Boom. Upside down. My mistake. First one. Do one good trademark behavior unique to you. And give feedback on work in a timely and specific way. Okay, these are a little hard to integrate. So give feedback on work in a timely and specific way. If they do something in class and you talk about it 3 weeks later, you know, Bob, that time where you used the verb, you said was go, it's better to say went. If you wait 3 weeks to do that, then there's no impact, right? So if you give feedback in a timely and specific way, you made a mistake, not specific. Don't say was go, say went. That's specific. I had a student that said was go. After a year, I was teaching him to stop saying is go. And I kept teaching him went, and a year later, he's changed it to was go. Progress, I guess. I still remember that student. Cute kid. Now, what's this do one good trademark behavior unique to you? I think that if you're going to teach in class, you have to do at least one thing that's specific to you in class, to give you a sense of identity, to give you a sense of, I'm different from these other teachers. You might be teaching in a place where other teachers are involved. I recently became friends with Facebook friends with Bob Packett from my high school. Bob Packett was a history teacher. And one of the things he did was he'd bring in props. He'd bring in an axe and he'd go shtoom on his desk. A battle axe, a kind of antique battle axe for teaching history. Now, the other teachers, the other history teachers, didn't do that sort of thing. They did other things. He wasn't my teacher. Someone else was. Gilbert Nichols was my history teacher. And Gilbert Nichols would deal with principles. He'd say, here's some interesting principles. People suppress what they fear and fear what they suppress. So he was kind of a principles guy. And I actually like that better. Sorry, Bob, if you're listening. But other people say, I love Bob Pack, he's fun, man. And I go, well, but Gilbert Nichols, Mr. Nichols, he's teaching principles of history, man. And so I like that. So there's something distinctive about these two. Now, I think so that one good trademark behavior, the packet aspect is a little bit closer to trademark behavior. If you do something that's a little bit different, like a look of some kind, like this, or something that you use to kind of facilitate things. Oh, okay. Sure. And then break away. If you have one quirk or whatever that you know that the students appreciate or like, or perhaps even make fun of, then that is worth bringing into class. If it's a good thing. If it's a bad thing, don't do it. So I might do this kind of nod thing like that. I've done that in class. Something specific like that that's not necessarily in any teacher training book, but it's something you do. Sometimes when I'm eating food and I'm enjoying it, I will kind of move the fork back and forth in the air, almost like I'm conducting. So it might be something that you're not terribly conscious of, but if you do that in class, that adds distinction. So what does that have to do with giving feedback on work in a timely and specific way? Well, if you have some kind of quirk that works with giving feedback, then when you give feedback quickly, then people will get a sense that, okay, it's feedback time. And they'll get a sense that it's something special about your class. So if I knew a teacher that would use she'd say Marco, and everyone would say Polo. And she would use that as a classroom thing. I didn't, I thought it was dumb, but she liked it. And she would use that in class. And that's a trademark behavior. Marco, Polo. Okay, let me talk about some things I heard on the board. And so that kind of thing can be useful to give feedback in a way that's timely and constructive if you're doing it a certain way. And that's all of them. Okay, so we were going to talk about hats, weren't we? Okay, so here's the first hat. And yes, I know you're judging it relative to the bola, the Sheila Smile bola and the jacket, which is also a Zara jacket. Okay, let's go with the hat. Okay, let's go with the Myeongdong. Okay, and let's go with the Zara. Okay, which one do you think looks the best? Feel free to make comments on whatever. And this is the Au Naturel. And if you prefer this, that's fine too. And that's all I have to say. So everyone, thank you so much. Feel free to do concepts from the hat in any kind of development aspect in your career, in your lives. There are other aspects of my life that I need to organize that I should probably do this for. So I might do another one of these videos on those kinds of things. Who knows? But I hope I know more about it at that time when I do. And with that, let's return to our original hat. And let me say thank you for listening. Thank you for everything you're doing. Keep on doing it. And have a good time. Marco, Polo.